It's time for
DodgerHeads.
high fly ball into right field. Dodgers have won it all in 2020. Shohei Ohtani, 50-50 club. Strikes him out. There's a drive. Shohei Ohtani. Freeman hits the ball. She is gone. Birthday party, Los Angeles. Your Dodgers have won the World Series.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Medium Large Sports Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight, as every Thursday night, by Bruce Kuntz, who is hopping in here to talk Dodgers, and we have tons to get to, so thank you to everybody that is joining us live on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, or those listening after the fact via podcast on Apple, Spotify, and Google. We appreciate you. Bruce, happy Thursday to you. A little day game action, so we got an open night on the schedule for ourselves.
Always nice to get the game out of the way, have the rest of the day to do whatever you want to do, and then know that this is on the schedule now to talk about it at night. So full day of Dodger thinking and talking.
I love it. I love it. Well, tons to get into. Let's start with the big picture stuff. The Dodgers sweep the Rockies, which at Coors Field, Bruce, I know a lot of people are going to laugh and say, well, of course you sweep the Rockies. You have to do this, yada, yada, yada. I know for me, Bruce, as a Dodgers fan who's watched way too many things go wrong in Coors Field, I never take a 3-game sweep of the Rockies for granted. Not for 1 second.
No, I don't take a 3-game sweep of anybody anywhere for granted, just for the nature of baseball, and especially at Coors Field. It doesn't matter how good the Dodgers are, how good the Rockies are. It seems like that's just a breeding place for chaos. So it feels like that obviously going in and sweeping the Rockies is something that was possible just because of how big of a discrepancy there is between the talent levels of the two teams. But it almost feels like you're escaping with a sweep and just glad that nothing went haywire like it usually does.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even Kershaw, right? We've seen the Kershaw horror stories at Coors Field, but we're going to get into today was not one of those. The Dodgers have now won 10 of their last 12. They now have a season high 6-game lead in the division, 6 games over the Padres, 6.5 over the Giants, who, if you missed it, folks, the Giants got swept by the Marlins. That really happened in Major League Baseball. So shout out to the Marlins for doing the dirty work for the Dodgers. Again, a season high 6-game lead in the division, 6.5 over the Giants second. So big picture, Bruce, I see we've got a question here from Hector, which Hector, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate you. He said, despite injuries and some underperforming players, the Dodgers offense remains elite at 51-31 midway through. How much better can they be with key arms returning? So they're now 1 game past the midway point, but after today, 51-31. How much better can this team be than the 51-31 version we've seen so far?
You know, that's a really high threshold, and it's hard to say it out loud that they can be better, but I think it's absolutely true. You look at how many things have not gone right so far this year. There's been underperformances through certain guys slumping at certain times, some guys just not performing at all. There's been so many injuries on the pitching staff, and it's not to say that all those things will go smoothly the rest of the year. It was a tumultuous first 81. There will be bumps in the road through the final 81 too, but it's, to me at least, hard to imagine it's as crazy as this first half of the season was. So I think this team is supremely talented. If we imagine any kind of addition happening at the trade deadline to make it even better, this group is special, and being where they're at right now with how many things have gone wrong, it really speaks to how much talent this group has.
Yeah, because I think if you look at sort of the 3 categories on this roster, I think if you look offensively, Mookie Betts would be the obvious guy who has underperformed expectations. But on the whole, I think the offense has either met or you could argue maybe even exceeded expectations. Ohtani's having a great season. Freeman, Smith, Teoscar, Pages. I mean, even Tommy Edman, who, although he's cooled off, I would say is right where I expected him to be, although I think it's been disappointing depending on how you viewed the beginning of it. Obviously, Conforto has been disappointing, although we'll get to him. Maybe, crossing our fingers, he's headed in the right direction. So offensively, it feels to me, Bruce, like status quo. The Dodgers, you could maybe even make a case, have been pretty fortunate to have been as healthy as they have been offensively. But to Hector's point, the question is the pitching staff, because if you ask me who the best 4 pitchers are on the Dodgers roster from a starting pitching perspective, they've essentially gotten nothing out of 3 of those guys. That would be Shohei Ohtani, Tyler Glasnow, and Blake Snell. And while Yamamoto has been fantastic, even with sort of some quote unquote regression of late, that would be the area I would say. I think the bullpen, I would say it's a mixed bag, because while you haven't gotten what you maybe hoped for from Treinen, from Kopech, from Yates, you've gotten way more than you could have ever hoped for from Jack Dreyer and Ben Kasperius. Vesey has been good. So I think bullpen and offense, I would say, Bruce, have been as expected. But I think the pitching staff is where I look to and say, if you go 51-31 with the group they've tossed out there, wait until they get good on that front.
Right. You just have to hope that that actually does happen, because it feels like, going into spring training, it was the same kind of thought of how are they going to have room for all these guys? And then it wasn't 2 weeks in, and all of a sudden it was, spot starts and wondering who the heck is going to pitch on Thursday and that kind of thing. So that's kind of the holding pattern that we're at, and it seems like always return back to for the Dodgers. But if this pitching staff does get healthy, even partially, like just get Glasnow and Snell back in there to like start some, and the ceiling is really hard to quantify.
And we're going to talk about a guy by the name of Emmett Sheehan later. And I tweeted yesterday, I think he's going to be a bona fide difference maker for this group. I don't think he's just organizational depth, even this year. Like, I don't think you have to project long-term with Sheehan. But again, I'll save those thoughts for a little bit later in the show. Here's the plan for tonight. We're going to talk about today's game. We're going to talk about Clayton Kershaw. I see a lot of questions filling the chat and some super chats on that front. We're going to kind of talk 4 biggest keys, talking points from today's game. We're going to do all-star voting. We're going to do some injury updates and odds and end type stuff. And then we will get to a prospect corner. And it's a prospect we've all heard of. Okay. That's, I don't want to say good news, because I liked learning about a guy I wasn't familiar with last week. This is a guy you'll be interested in hearing about. I'll just say that. Let's get to a couple more super chats, Bruce, because they touch on some things that we're going to get to. Carlos opens us up. Do you think Conforto has turned it around? He did not play today. Back-to-back games with the home run, though, in Coors Field. Had a couple other hits mixed in as well. It's 2 games and it's Coors Field. But are you feeling any sort of optimism about my guy, Michael Conforto?
I absolutely am. I think that it's nice to see some results finally translate for him. Conforto, it's hard to approach this without acknowledging that like what happens on the field is the thing that matters, and the expected numbers don't actually really mean anything, but his expected numbers have been so much better than his actual results all year long. And so to finally see a couple of hard hit balls leave the yard and not just be right at the second baseman or right on the ground to shortstop is really nice to see. I think he continues to string together good at bats. The walk rate stays high. Just getting some results out of the hard hit balls is what he needs. And I think that was due for some sort of regression. And if he can even add to it a little bit, then the Dodgers can feel confidence in him in left field.
And I would say, too, part of this is just mental. And even if it is Coors Field and it's a huge outfield and he got a double to drop and the ball flew a little further, whatever, even if you don't believe that what you saw over the last 2 days was real, it's going to feel real to him. For a guy who is desperate for some good luck, he's going to walk into the batter's box with more confidence tomorrow than he did yesterday. And I think that in and of itself should help. Again, we are not looking for Michael Conforto to be a 300 hitter. We're looking for him to be like a 240 hitter, because if he hits 240, the on-base percentage is going to be pushing 400 the way that he's been walking so far this season. And if he gets a little bit of slug in there, then watch out. He's going to be a productive player, not an amazing all-star level player necessarily, but a productive one. So you all know how I feel about Conforto. We'll see if I turn out to be an idiot or if I turn out to be right on that one. Carlos also asked, is Kershaw actually pitching elite, or are we glazing because we love Kersh? It's a fair question, Carlos. We appreciate it. J-Riff with a similar one. Kershaw looking much better than I expected so far, to be honest. When will they finally start giving Kim the playing time? Dave keeps saying they will. Let's table Kersh, because we're going to talk in a second. Real quick on Ha-Seong Kim. Did not play against Colorado. The best explanation I can come up with, Bruce, is they did not trust him to play center field in that cavernous ballpark. Despite his speed, they figure a wrong read in that stadium turns a single into a triple. So do you think it's as simple as that for why he didn't play in Colorado?
I think it's partially that, but it's also just Michael Conforto looking better. They want to take advantage of that hot streak and don't want to sit him until there's a reason to, which is today with the lefty. It's not like they were going to put Kim in to face Austin Gomber. So I think Kim will get some reps, but it's just tough because when we talk about Conforto being the expected numbers way better than the actual, Kim is the flip side of that coin. Yeah. And he's going to overperform some of the expected numbers just because of the speed. So that's something to know as part of the equation for him. But still, I think most people would be able to acknowledge that the way that Ha-Seong Kim has performed offensively isn't exactly the player that he is. I think he's earned more reps and he'll get some more, but when everybody's healthy right now, the Dodgers are trying to get Michael Conforto turned around. That's the short-term goal. And when he had started to look a little better, I think playing him in both those games in Coors, a great place to hit, just try and get him some confidence, I think made some sense. And then, like you said, sticking Kim out there in center field at Coors is a pretty tough assignment.
Yeah, absolutely. Carlos, we're going to come back to your question. Last one here. Bacon Tree. Mookie hitting the ball a little harder. Freddie had good swings. Since earning more playing time, Kim has only 10 plate appearances, padding the NL West lead. And then he asks Sirota to Double-A soon. So we got a prospect question for you, Bruce. We're going to get to Freddie and Kim and all that stuff. So, but Sirota, real quick, do you think he gets the Double-A promotion soon?
He's got to be close. There isn't really much left for him to prove at high A. And he's the kind of player that you have to acknowledge, like a 3-year college guy is going to usually have an easier transition to the lower minor leagues. And he's absolutely done that. He's been as productive as any hitter in the minor leagues. And every time that it feels like he may be slowing down or have a couple of slower games in a row, then all of a sudden he gets right back to, I believe he homered the last couple of days. And he hit one yesterday. It was like 110 off the bat, just an absolute bomb. So he's really proven that he can hit high A pitching already. So I think that jump to Double-A will be the first time that he's really facing competition that's significantly higher than anything he's seen before. And I think he's ready for it.
And Sirota, for those unfamiliar, was part of the package the Dodgers received in exchange for Gavin Lux, in addition to a draft pick in the upcoming draft as well. And you have Sirota like inside your top 5 to 7 prospects in the organization, right?
Yeah, most definitely.
There you go. All right, let's get to today's game. The Dodgers beat the Rockies 3-1. And I was telling Bruce, we're going to try and structure our conversation about games here a little bit. And I identified what I want to call 4 talking points from today's game, And the first one is Clayton Kershaw. And we had the super chat from Carlos saying, is Kershaw actually pitching elite, or are we glazing because we love Kersh? The answer might be both, Carlos. Let's just put it that way. It might be both. 6 innings for Clayton Kershaw is the final line. 2 hits, 1 earned, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts, a 19% whiff rate with 6 whiffs. He needed 8 to get to 3,000. We're going to talk about that. Let's just talk about the Kershaw we saw, because to me, Bruce, I look at how good Kershaw has been of late. First start of the year, 4 innings, 5 earned. It was his first one back. We know about that. Since then, 34 2/3 with a 2.08 ERA for Clayton Kershaw in every start except for his first. And on top of that, in his last 23 innings pitched, he's had 21 strikeouts. So what looked at the beginning of the year to be like, oh, you're going to get maybe 6 innings, 3 strikeouts, he's getting up close to almost a strikeout per inning, which I did not expect from him. So to answer Carlos's question, I'll ask it to you, Bruce. Like, is he actually pitching this well, or is this a mirage?
Somewhere in the middle, because I don't think Clayton Kershaw is going to be a 2.08 ERA guy the rest of the year. He's not that anymore, and I think that some hard contact will catch up at some point. But he's putting up competitive innings, and I think Kershaw is the ultimate example of a guy that you cannot just pull up his Fangraphs page and compare his FIP compared to his ERA and talk about, oh, automatic regression is coming, because he's going to go out there and he's going to pitch. There is nobody in baseball that I have more confidence in to pitch than Clayton Kershaw. It doesn't matter if the fastball is 88, could be 82. He's going to go out there and locate, and he's going to pitch professionally, and he's going to get outs. And that's what we've seen here lately, which is very, very reassuring, because the very beginning, I'll admit, I was a little worried about the fastball being sub 90 and wondering whether it was going to work. But when he's able to throw the slider more than the fastball, and he's built in the curveball quite a bit more this year, it feels like that's he's not the 2-pitch guy anymore. He's borderline 4 pitches with the splitter in the mix as well. So Kershaw, I think, not going to be a 2 ERA guy the rest of the year, but if he can sit at a 3 to 3.5 range, which I think that he's looking like he'll be capable of doing, that's going to be plenty valuable.
And it's worth pointing out, I saw somebody saying, oh, come on, he's done it against nobody. Like, now, the first Mets start was 2 innings, perfect innings, I might add, and then it was rain delay. But, I mean, basically, he started against the Mets twice, the Guardians, the Cardinals, the Giants, and the Nationals, and then, of course, today against the Rockies. So like most of those teams are actually good teams that was part of that 29 game gauntlet against teams above 500. And then even today it's in Coors Field. So I know it's the Rockies, but it's in Coors Field. And so I don't feel like it's lessened competition. And that's the reason for it. I think it's what you said, Bruce. And it's why I've held on hope and got called all sorts of names for believing that Kershaw was going to be good this year. He just continues to limit damage. We've said it on this show, and people are probably sick of hearing it. When he has been healthy, he has never not been good. Like, it is always good. He limits scoring better than any pitcher in Major League history. And yes, he's getting up there in age and the fastball velocity is diminished, but he just continues to do it. And so I'm with you. I don't think he's a 2 ERA guy. Maybe I need to adjust to the low threes. I think I was in the 3.5, 3.8 range to begin this, but I just, from what he's getting better. Like the regression isn't coming. We're going the other direction. He's striking more and more guys out. And today he had 69 pitches through 6 innings. Like, this very well could have been an 8 or 9 inning performance from Clayton Kershaw if he was not pulled early. And so I'm just fascinated to see where this goes, which that's the real talking point here, I think, Bruce, and I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah,
6 innings, 69 pitches,
right.
1 earned run, 5 strikeouts. He needed 8 to get to 3,000. What were your thoughts on Clayton Kershaw being removed from this game in that spot, given the context of the game? It was 3-1 at the time. I believe Ohtani's home run. Let's see. I believe Ohtani's home run came after. Excuse me. So it was 2-1 when he left the game, and then Ohtani hit the solo home run after. So what were your thoughts on him coming out of that game?
I thought it was fine. He got through 6, and you mentioned it to me right before we went on the air that Kershaw said after the game that he appreciates the chance to take care of his body from Dave Roberts. And I think Kershaw's in a place where any extra chance to sit and get some extra rest, there's no reason to push it, is basically what I'm saying. And he did his job. They clearly felt like they had a roadmap that could cover 3 innings and feel confident in that. And that's exactly what happened. So yeah. I think Kershaw had a great start. Sending him back out there for 7, regardless of exactly where the pitch count is, that's 69 pitches in 4 innings is not equal to 69 pitches through 6 and going up, down 7 times. So he had a great start today. And I think that they knew with the Rocky lineup coming back to the top again, and there was no reason to push it, and they had the roadmap ready. So be happy with it. And then you can go back home on Wednesday and get the 3,000 strikeout.
Yeah, for me, I was kind of bummed because I thought he was dealing, and sub 70 pitches. I know everybody's saying, hey, we wanted him to get the record in Los Angeles. Sure. Like, I don't really care. His family was there. So clearly he thought it was in the realm of possibilities, and he was prepared for achieving that there. And as the game went on, by the way, he has 3 strikeouts through 2 innings, and I'm tweeting like, oh my gosh, is this going to happen? Because if he has 7 strikeouts in the first 5 innings, like, what are they going to do? He has none in the 3rd, none in the 4th, gets 1 in the 5th, 1 in the 6th. I just wish they would have sent him back out there because he was pitching great. Like, it was a close game. It was, again, 2-1 when they made the decision to remove him from that game. It would have been 3-1 before he took the mound again, but I wasn't worried about him striking out the side in the 7th inning. And so I was kind of like, let him continue to pitch. And honestly, Bruce, I wanted him to get closer. Like, I want him to be 1 strikeout away by the time he takes it next, because look, he's had starts with just 3 strikeouts this year. And I don't want there to be this huge buildup and then for something to go sideways and him for not to get it. So again, Kershaw says after, I'm glad Dave's protecting me. I'll defer to Clayton Kershaw in all things, but I don't know. I would have been fine with 1 more inning given the pitch count and the fact that there was like a 95% chance he wasn't going to get 3 strikeouts in that inning anyways.
Really, I don't think it's likely that the 3,000 strikeout thing determined whether they sent him back out or not. I think that it was just a matter of game planning and going back out for 7. Clayton Kershaw, when they're looking at the rest of the season, I think every 7 innings is enough out of the tank that when he's already through 6, that means that he got plenty deep into the game to help out the bullpen and do his job as a good start as the starter. And then from there, you're just asking for extra that, could take a little extra out of the tank. Even if the tank wasn't empty, which I imagine it wasn't after 69 pitches, you have a chance to not fully drain it. And just for overall maintenance, if there's anybody that could use that, then that's Kershaw. So I imagine they felt comfortable covering the next 3 innings. So it was just like, might as well make this a slightly less draining day and be able to leave it on a very positive note.
And just to be clear, because you said something that I think most people would nod their head in agreement, but there's a small section of the group that is going to need clarification. You don't think how many strikeouts he had played any role in the decision to remove him from this game?
No, the Dodgers are trying to win baseball games, and if it happened to happen in Coors, then I don't think, me personally, I don't imagine that was the main factor. If it was a tiny factor, maybe, but I don't think that's the way they approach things usually. Like, go win the baseball game. If it's a 2-1 game entering the 7th inning, what's the best way for the Dodgers to make sure they could sweep the Rockies at Coors? I think that's the main thing that's in everybody's minds.
I will agree that I don't think it was the main thing on Dave Roberts' mind. He was asked pregame about, like, how would you handle this type of situation, that kind of a deal. I just have to believe that for a number like this, with Dave Roberts, with Clayton Kershaw, the significance of it, I think it had to be there. Now, I was in a text thread. Anthony Witrato and I were going back and forth about, like, they asked Dave, it's a 6th inning. He has 7 strikeouts. What do you do? And Anthony was like, what do you do if he has 7 strikeouts in, like, the 4th inning, and he's cruising? And then what do you do? So I think it was part of it. I think it was part of it because Kershaw has gone further. He could have pitched more. And I do think, like, and maybe this is where there's a part of me, Bruce, that likes the idea. Of course, the Dodgers need to be trying to win these games. They knew they had a bullpen that was available. They could go get 9 outs. They weren't asking for 15 outs from this group. I'm kind of okay with the Dodgers taking a small risk in order to make sure that this record gets not record. This milestone is accomplished at Dodger Stadium. Like, I think that matters. And this might be contradictory to lots of things I've said on this show, but I think the Dodgers have enough of a gap in the standings to say, hey, we're going to take a small risk. Cause I do think Kershaw was pitching awesome. We're going to take a small risk and we're going to go to a bullpen, Kirby Yates, who struggled a little bit. I'm perfectly okay with that personally.
It's interesting to think about because I kind of differ where if I were approaching it and the Dodgers, whatever, if they believed that the best way to win this game, and also it's not just an individual game, but to win throughout the season, which means keeping Kershaw healthy, all those things too. But if they believed the best winning decision was to send him back out and they didn't, just thinking about having that milestone happen at Dodger Stadium and then the lead got blown, then that would leave a sour taste in my mouth. I don't think that's the way I would prefer they operate. So I guess we will never know which thing drove the decision, but ultimately it worked out. And now Dodgers got the sweep and they can hope that he can get the record at home.
Yeah. All right. I'm with you. We did have a super chat. Chase says, do you remember Jamie Moyer? Kershaw pitches till 2030 ? I think Kershaw has other things that he wants to do with his life. And so, as I said on Twitter, savor every single Clayton Kershaw day, because you never know how many more you're going to have. And so today was a fantastic one. But Jay, we appreciate the super chat. I don't know if you disagree, Bruce. You think Kershaw's got 6 more seasons in him?
It's been 6 years that every offseason we're like, is he coming back? So I think that answers the question that it's going to continue to be every single offseason wondering whether this is it. And I don't think that goes on too much longer.
Wednesday, by the way, is Clayton Kershaw's next start at home against the Chicago White Sox. Our own Matthew Moreno, big nerd stats guy, throwing out strikeout percentage. Moreno tweeted about strikeout rate today, which was an unbelievable thing. And for him, that's basically a foreign language. So he says the White Sox strike out a lot, which is good news. So shout out to Matt for getting us the nerd stats. Big closet nerd over there is what I'm starting to think with Moreno. Okay, a couple more talking points from today's game. Let's talk Freddie Freeman. Snaps a hitless streak. He came into his at bat in the top of the 6th, 1-1 game, runners on base. He was 0 for 11 against the Rockies. He was in a 1 for 22 slump altogether. First pitch, smacks a single into right field, puts the go-ahead run on the board, gives the Dodgers a 2-1 lead. We know, Bruce, that he's been a mess of late. He looks totally frustrated personally. Even when he gets a hit, I don't think he's been happy about it. How quickly, do you think something like this could get Freddie Freeman back on the right track, potentially?
Yeah, you'd hope so, right? Just seeing a ball fall means a lot. But I also think that Freddie Freeman, as you've said, even when he has had hits over this last couple week stretch where he hasn't been right, you can see it even when he gets down to first base that he's shaking his head and saying that was not the swing that I want, even if it found grass. One of the things that I think is a positive thing about Freddie is that he's so process oriented and not results oriented. So even when he lines out, if it's a good swing, he's going back to the dugout with his head high. Feels like it's kind of working in the inverse here, but ultimately hits falling is a good feeling no matter what as a hitter. He's just been he hasn't looked like himself. It's been uncharacteristic swing decisions pretty often. It's been a lot of outs when he's ahead in the count. That's something I've noticed quite a bit, like 2-0 swings. He's swung 3-0 sometimes, 3-1 line drives that are top spun right to the second baseman, like swings that you're not used to seeing from the professional hitter, Freddie Freeman. So ultimately hits, hopefully will get him back on track just to feel the barrel and just feel like himself again.
Yeah, let's get Fred Freeman throwing him some batting practice or whatever turned him around in the middle of the playoffs. Let's just get a repeat of that one. Third on the talking point, Shohei Ohtani extends his NL home run lead. I mentioned that Freddie Freeman's single gave the Dodgers a 2-1 lead. Ohtani in the 7th hits his 28th home run, extending his NL lead, giving the Dodgers a 3-1 lead, which ended up being the final score. But again, we talked earlier about the offense meeting, exceeding, falling short of expectations. Ohtani somehow, as like the best hitter in the National League, is like, it's like, yeah, I'm not saying that I'm not impressed, but it's like, I don't feel like he's on a tear. I don't feel like he's on this unsustainable heater. It just feels like par for the course Shohei Ohtani.
I imagine it's the same thing with how Yankee fans feel watching Aaron Judge, that they just expect him to go out and slug every day. And that's the same way it is with Ohtani. And with certain guys that have struggled, Mookie Betts hasn't been right. There's been slumps for Freddie and Teoscar throughout the year. Pages didn't start good before he got great. So there's been tumultuous batting throughout the rest of the order, but it doesn't matter what time it is. Shohei Ohtani just shows up and hits and slugs and hits more home runs than anybody else. And it's really remarkable because it's just the expectation. Like you said, there's nothing that feels out of the ordinary. When Ohtani hits a homer, it's like, well, it felt like he was due. It's been a couple days. It's just crazy how high the expectations are and that he continues to meet it so easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally with you. And again, it's just like, oh yeah, he hit a home run, by the way. He's 28th, leads the league by like a few, and no big deal. So
something like
yeah. Last one, Andy Pages, the last play of the game. If you missed this, go find a clip. I know a few different people have posted it on social media. It's the bottom of the 9th inning. Colorado is down by 2 with Tanner Scott in. Freeman walks, not Freddie Freeman, the Rockies Freeman walks. And with 1 out, Estrada hits a ball into even left center field, feels slightly misleading. I mean, Andy Pages, the center fielder, had to run a little bit towards left field. He catches the ball and cannot believe that Freeman is so far off of first base that from left center field, Andy Pages throws a 1-hopper to double off Freeman to end the game. So my question to you is this, Bruce: better throw or dumber base running decision?
Credit to Andy Pages for being ready for this and not getting surprised, but 100% this was the worst base running decision that I've seen in quite some time. This would be unacceptable in Little League. It would be unacceptable in Babe Ruth. It would be unacceptable in high school ball. And the further you go up the ladder, the more that you expect this absolutely could never, ever happen. And when you get to the big leagues, it's just unbelievable to imagine that this is something that actually happened. A base runner getting that far off the base. He wasn't the tying run. That's the main thing to point out here. The Rockies needed more than Freeman, and he still got himself doubled off on an easily catchable ball. It's not like Pages made some crazy diving catch. Even then, it would be unacceptable. But there's so much in the equation here that should have made this absolutely impossible. I know that as Freeman, when he dove back to the bag and put his face in the dirt and laid there, I imagine he wanted to disappear from the earth because he was so embarrassed and just thinking, I cannot believe I just did that.
Yeah, Tyler Freeman, by the way, was the Rockies player. And it was, to your point, the key here is he was not the tying run. And so whether he got to second if this ball lands or to third was completely irrelevant. It changed nothing about the complexion of the game if they had first and second or first and third if this ball were to have landed. So in a situation where there is literally no upside to being off of the bag, and not to mention this was an easily catchable ball that should have been obvious to everybody was going to be caught, for him to get doubled off is insane. And to your point, incredible throw by Andy Pages. It 1-hops. It's a right on the money. Great stretch by Freddie Freeman to get him. But man, we know Pages has an arm, but Tyler Freeman gave him an opportunity to use it that never should have been there.
I'll add too that obviously the main reflection here is on Tyler Freeman making an absolutely boneheaded base running play, but it also does not reflect well on the Rockies staff. And I think this is something that is prevalent throughout pro ball and big league baseball too. But I just believe at any level of baseball, doesn't matter what it is, that first base coach needs to be saying, station to station, we need more than you. Absolutely no outs on the bases. Those simple reminders would have prevented this. And Tyler Freeman didn't get them. Obviously, you shouldn't really need them if you're a big league base runner, but that's just the right way to play the game. It didn't happen, and a couple of people fouled up, and that's how you wind up with something that no winning team would ever have this happen. And Tyler Freeman, that's a tough one to go to sleep at night thinking that you lost the game that way.
Yeah, well, and I mean, the good news, if you are a Rockies fan, I would say, is that the owner's son is now going to be the team president, and in addition to the other owner's other son is the pro scouting director. So the good news, Rockies fans, is that the competency of your ownership is just going to trickle down. They're now in charge of every element of your team. So it's good news.
The Montfort ship will continue to sail, whether it's sailing to the bottom of the ocean or wherever else they're going to stick with it.
I say this all the time. Bruce, can you imagine if this was a Rocky show and you and I had to come on after this and it's like, well, like we're in double digits for wins now. And, we're talking about this Tyler Freeman play and like trying to imagine if the happiness of our day had even a 5% link to the Rockies winning or losing a baseball game. I can't even imagine.
It wouldn't be an hour and a half long show, and there would not be food questions at the end because we'd all be wanting to turn off our laptops and just sit in a dark room and stare at the ceiling because that's not a fun life to live. I'll say because I like Denver sports in a general sense because I'm a big Bronco fan, and the dark days of Broncos football, and I'm sure everybody else who has sports teams that aren't as good as the Dodgers can appreciate it too. Not a good feeling, and the Rockies are absolute bottom of the barrel, as bad as it could possibly get.
Counterpoint, it might be entirely food questions for Rocky's show. So that's how I'm thinking. Just all a distraction,
Anything to not think about Tyler Freeman getting doubled off when he wasn't the tying run.
Absolutely. All right, let's get to a couple more super chats. Carlos Garcia's got a couple questions for us. Shohei Ohtani, we'll talk about here in just a second, is scheduled to pitch on Saturday as part of the quote gradual buildup. That was David Vassay's language. Do you believe he will pitch more than one inning this time around, Bruce?
I think so. They talked about before the last start that originally the thinking was that he would be able to go 2, and then it sounded like right before the game they decided that 1 was going to be better. Shohei rolled through that 1 inning in his last outing too, so I imagine if things are going smooth enough, like if he finishes the first inning in less than 20-25 pitches, then I don't see any reason not to put him out there for a second. Ultimately, you have to start the build-up somewhere, and back-to-back outings of 1 inning are already, that's slower than a minor league rehab build-up would go. And obviously with Shohei, there's absolutely no pressure. There's not a need to dial up the speed or the intensity, and that's why he only went 1 in that last outing. But, I think it seems like he's ready to go 2 as long as things don't go crazy and it's a 35-pitch first inning or something like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think as long as the first inning is like under 25 pitches, I think we will see Ohtani in the second. And I would imagine their goal, if he does get to a second inning, is not like to have to remove him from the beginning of that. Like, I think they're going to look and say, all right, let's try and get this up to 35-ish pitches. And if we can get through 2 innings, that's going to be the goal. Carlos, one more question here. This is a really good and interesting one. Do you think Lou Trevino gets DFA'd when other pitchers return from injuries? What are your overall thoughts on Lou Trevino? Some numbers for you real quick. Since coming over to the Dodgers, 17 innings, a 3.18 ERA. So he's been solid. The issue for Trevino is if at some point there is a roster crunch, which it looks like there might be eventually, whether or not he is on the outside looking in. You look at the bullpen as it currently stands. You've got Bonda, Dreyer, Luis Garcia, who returned today, Kopech, Tanner Scott, Lou Trevino, Alex Vesia, and Kirby Yates, in addition to kind of Robleski, Ben Kasperius types that are sort of in between. But if you look at the bigger 40-man roster, you've got Alexis Diaz, who started making appearances and is currently in the minor leagues. You've got guys like Edgardo Enriquez, who's on the 60-day IL, but is expected back, I would say, somewhat soon. Brusdar Graterol, who knows exactly what the timeline is with him. So when you look at kind of the bigger picture, Emmett Sheehan due back at some point, I can see why this is a question. So let's start with your thoughts on Lou Trevino. And secondly, do you think there's room for him on this roster? I won't say long-term, but throughout the season.
Yeah, he hasn't been bad by any stretch. He's been good, like you said, a sub 3.5 ERA. Like he's done his job when he's been out there, but he hasn't been so shut down or automatic that he puts himself into the group of untouchables. I don't think that that's the case. He's a little older. It's not like that he's a new young guy that they picked up off waivers and think they can build around. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if he got the axe if it became absolutely necessary. I don't think he's the first guy on the chopping block though. So they would need to continue to get healthy, not have things go wrong with multiple guys. But ultimately, like you said, it's going to be a crunch as this season goes along. And Trevino, he's one of those guys that even if you think about after the season, if he makes it all the way through, once you get to the Rule of 5 40-man crunch heading into the offseason, he's one of the guys that could get let go there too. So I don't think that he's somebody that the Dodgers are approaching saying we have to find a way to keep him. He's not even like Brazier a couple of years ago where he came over as a waiver claim and just pitched so well that he worked himself into a back-end role. He's not in that boat either, so I don't think that he's untouchable.
And I would even say, like, looking at some of the guys that are coming back, like the way he has pitched so far, I'm not sure Edgardo Enriquez is quote unquote good enough to where the Dodgers would say, we're going to DFA Lou Trevino in order to get Enriquez up to the big league club. Somebody like Alexis Diaz might be above that line. A Diaz, like if they think he's ready, that might be a guy that they say, hey, we're ready to make a move, whether it's Luis Garcia or whether it's Lou Trevino. But some of the others, like at one point I was like, I mean, is Jack Dreyer, do they just option him at some point just to free up some roster space? But he literally has the best ERA on the entire bullpen. So I think there might be some complicated decisions for the Dodgers moving forward, but we'll see. I hear some weird stuff. Is that coming out of my mic?
I don't know if it's my speaker or your microphone.
Okay. Well,
it's one of them.
It's one of those two. It's one of those two. Why don't you mute your microphone real quick? Yeah. We'll just see if that seems to have solved it a little bit. So we'll just leave that off for a second and we'll see if maybe this goes away. Who knows?
My computer, not my microphone.
Okay. There we go.
You got me?
Yeah, it's still a little bit of an echo.
Did it sound okay before when I had my computer muted?
Yes.
Okay, it must be me then.
Okay. Well, you mute and figure that out, and then we'll talk through some of these other things.
Okay. I'm gonna put in headphones. I'll be back.
Sounds good. Let's talk All-Star voting because we do have a large All-Star update and a lot of good stuff. So All-Star voting. Phase 1 of voting has ended, and Dodgers fans, the headline is this: fantastic job by you. Phase 1 ended on Thursday. Phase 2 starts on Monday. But here are the headlines of Phase 1, and here's what you need to know about Phase 2. Phase 1, the good news: Shohei Ohtani, top vote getter in all of the National League, and as a result of that, he is a guaranteed starter at designated hitter for the National League All-Stars. He is expected to be the DH. Dave Roberts has said he will bat leadoff. So you can not pencil, you can pen in Shohei Ohtani batting first as DH in the National League All-Star game. The second thing is Phase 2 only includes the top 2 vote getters at every position in each league. So if you were third or worse on any position other than outfield, you're no longer eligible to be a starter. 1 and 2 will face off, and get this, with totally reset voting. So all the votes from Phase 1 are completely wiped out. Here's the good news for the Dodgers, though. Every single guy on the ballot for the Dodgers, with the exception of my guy, Michael Conforto, made it to Phase 2. So there's 2 at every position except for outfield. There are 6 outfielders, and here's how it plays out. Will Smith finished first. He will go up against Carson Kelly of the Cubs. Freddie Freeman finished first. Will go up against Pete Alonso. Tommy Edman finished second behind Marte. Betts finished second at shortstop behind Lindor. Muncy finished second behind Machado. And then in the outfield, Teoscar Hernandez finished second. Pages jumped Corbin Carroll, jumped Juan Soto to get number 5 spot in the outfield situation. So Teo and Pages are now up against Pete Crow Armstrong, Acuna, Tucker, and Soto. So when I look at the entirety of that group and the scope of it, what is crazy to me and exciting to me, and I actually think is a real possibility, there's a world where the Dodgers get 8 starters in the All-Star game. There is a world where if Dodger fans do their job, Bruce, they can have the starting catcher, the starting first baseman, second baseman, shortstop, third baseman, 2 outfielders, and designated hitters. All of those things are within the realm of possibility. And what I would say is, Dodgers fans, get out and do your job. Get out and if we pound the table, I mean, we saw what just happened with Andy Pages, the fact that we were able to get him into the top 6, not even 6th, but into the top 5. If the Dodgers can continue that momentum and go out and vote all the way up and down the ballot, Smith, Freeman, Edman, Betts, Muncy, Teo, Pages, with Shohei Ohtani already guaranteed to be in that spot, I think, and I don't know if our sound is totally working, but I think, Bruce, the Dodgers could realistically get 8 players into the All-Star game. Moment of truth. What do you think?
I think that it's going to be tough to do that. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm still... All right, cool. I think it's going to be tough to do that because there's a couple guys that I don't see the statistical stat lines looking better than their counterparts. Like looking at second base, I don't think Tommy Edman is going to be able to beat Ketel Marte because Marte's just been so good. Machado, I think, has a good chance to beat. So realistically looking across, I don't think that is going to happen. But there's always the factor you have to consider that Dodger fans could just go to the polls and just blow it out of the water. I did not expect Andy Pages to leapfrog Juan Soto in this final stage to even make it into this group. I thought he was going to make it when Corbin Carroll got hurt. I thought that was going to allow Pages to just sneak in, but no, Dodger fans voted well enough that Pages got cleared Juan Soto by a couple thousand votes. I think it wasn't particularly close there for Pages to get the 5th spot. So, I mean, I won't put it past Dodger fans if they want to go to the polls and just make their truth what they want to see, voted into existence, then I don't think anything's impossible.
Yeah. And to be clear, I'm not saying Dodgers players deserve to be starters at every single one of these positions. I'm saying whether you want to call this the beauty or the ugliness of all-star votings, the Dodgers can't. This is possible for them. Now, if things go the way that they already went, you would have Smith, Freeman, and Teoscar Hernandez would join Shohei Ohtani as starters. The rest of those guys finished outside of the starter mold. Now, I think a guy like Mookie Betts will eventually make this all-star team one way or another. I think Max Muncy might be in the mix, although his overall season numbers aren't that great. And Andy Pages, I think, probably belongs in that category as well. But that's just the position player side. I want to talk pitching with you as well, Bruce, because I think there's at least one Dodger pitcher that I feel pretty good about making it into the All-Star game, and that would be Yoshinobu Yamamoto. As it currently stands, he is 5th in ERA, 6th in wins, and 10th in strikeouts among National League starting pitchers, although he's 11th in wins above replacement. Given what we've seen from Yamamoto thus far, do you think it's safe to say that Yamamoto will be an All-Star?
Yeah, he should be a lock, I think. Yamamoto, even as in this last month or so, he hasn't been the perfect pitcher that he was to begin, but he's still been plenty good. And I think that if you look at what Yoshinobu Yamamoto has done for this first part of the year, this first half, if that's not an all-star campaign, I don't know what is. So you can look at, like you said, the WAR is 11th. And I think that's mostly because he hasn't pitched quite as many innings as some of the other competitors because he hasn't made as many starts with the different rests that he's got. But he's been so good. I don't see a way that he doesn't make it. And that's always tough to boil down because they always have to find a way to get every team an all-star. But that's where I think we're going to segue to talk about the bullpen. It makes it tougher for the Dodgers to get guys in that way. But a guy like Yoshinobu Yamamoto has done everything he needs to do, checked every box to be an all-star. And I think that he'll get that recognition.
Outside of Yamamoto, you mentioned the bullpen. I think there's 2 guys that you could make some case for. I think that's Tanner Scott and Ben Kasparius would be the 2. Tanner Scott is 5th in the National League in saves, 9th in wins above replacement among relief pitchers. He is 50th in ERA, though. There are lots of guys ahead of him. Jack Dreyer, Alex Vesia, Ben Kasparius all have better ERAs than Tanner Scott does, although Tanner Scott has been incredible of late. Kasparius, on the other hand, is kind of a complicated one because when I say he's 5th in wins above replacement and has the most innings pitched of any reliever, that's in part because he's basically been a pseudo starter for the last 2 or 3 times through the rotation. So that's a little misleading. I still think on name recognition alone, Tanner Scott would probably have the edge to me if one of these guys was going to make it. But do you think either of them has a real chance of being in Atlanta?
I think Tanner Scott could have a chance because he's up there in the saves category. And that's one that I think that the older group, when they're assembling these kind of rosters, that means something.
You can just say Matt Moreno's name. When Matt Moreno is filling out his ballot, he looks at wins and saves. That's fine.
Yeah. But I don't know, because you look at for example, the Rockies and the Dodgers are just leaving Coors. Jake Bird is probably going to be their all-star, and that's just a guy in the bullpen that maybe wouldn't be an all-star in a regular year, but because the Rockies need a representative, that's, I think, oftentimes where they just pull the best reliever and say, this is good enough. So that's the way that I think Tanner Scott could not make it, is if they need to fill the rest of the bullpen with teams like the Marlins and the Rockies that maybe don't have a guy that would normally make it, but they need a representative. That might force Tanner Scott off the roster, unfortunately. But I also don't know if his season has been good enough to say he needs to be an all-star. The ERA isn't particularly low, so I wouldn't feel like that he's getting particularly robbed. So I would say it's a coin flip, in my opinion.
Any chance Clayton Kershaw gets sort of a on reputation? Maybe his last season been awesome of late. I mean, he's 38 and 2/3 now, but let's say there's a couple more starts mixed in here. Is there 0% chance, 1% chance? What would you say?
I'd give it like a 5 to 10. I don't think
Okay.
it's impossible, just like you said, because of reputation. If they say, hey, look, Clayton Kershaw's numbers have been great. Sure, he wasn't healthy for the first part of the year, but when he has been healthy, he's pitched great. Let's just give him this. I don't think that's impossible, but I also think that there's enough really good starting pitchers that have been healthy the entire year that it might be time to spread the wealth. And ultimately, that might be the most justifiable thing.
And Kershaw himself is not going to want to get there on honorary sort of terms either. And I think if this was like a public, like, hey, retirement year ceremony type thing, then I think it's maybe different. They've done those types of things before. Like, hey, it's this guy's last year. We're not even going to take away somebody else's spot. We're just going to add an extra guy here to allow this game to play out. I could see that. But because he hasn't announced it'll be his final year and because he just hasn't pitched that much, I'm with you. So I would also, so let me ask you then. How many Dodgers are in the All-Star game? Ultimately, do you think? We know one for sure. I mentioned there's 7 more who are in phase 2 of voting. And then we mentioned 3 pitchers who are in the mix. So of the 11, not including Kershaw, of the 11, how many, you don't have to give me names, but how many do you think make it?
I'm going to put it in the 5 to 6 range because
Okay.
I think Yamamoto, I think, will make it. Ohtani's already a lock. Will Smith has to be the catcher. And then I think you could choose 2 to 3 of the Teoscar, Pages, Muncy, maybe Tanner Scott group. I think that
Freddie feels like he's got to be in there, right?
Oh, Freddie too. He's in that group of maybes. I think in this portion of the voting, Freddie slowed down enough that Pete Alonso might be able to win that starting job. And depending on if Freddie turns it around in this next couple of weeks, he might have a better chance at a reserve nod than, but we'll see. But I think he's in that group of not necessarily locks, but 5 to 6, I think, is a place that I would put it.
Jeff's the optimist. We're going 9, baby. We're getting 8 starters, Bruce, and Yamamoto's in the mix as well. Dodgers fans, there's like a billion people that live in Los Angeles. All right. Like we're a worldwide. Let's get the folks in Japan. Let's get the folks in Korea. Let's circle the wagons, folks, and just vote up and down the ballot. There's only 2 names, and every single category has a Dodger, if not 2, in the outfield. Like, what are we doing? Like, if you're going to vote Will Smith, which you should, and Freddie Freeman, which you should, then freaking vote all these guys. Like, do some of them deserve it? I'm not going to name names. People get mad when I name who doesn't deserve it. But no, of course they don't. But it would be freaking hilarious if we had 8 of the 9 starters as Dodgers. And we can do it. That is in play here. And so all the voting reset. So even Muncy, Betts, Edman, Pages, we're all on the outside looking in. It does not matter. Send the whole freaking team. 9 Dodgers, Yamamoto, and the 8 position players. Book it, everybody. Dodgers.
I remember when I remember when the Royals did that, and I think it was 2015, and it was practically, I remember, like, I think the whole infield was Kansas City Royals, and everybody was very frustrated at it because it did not make any sense at all. But I would say if Dodger fans were to be able to put together a campaign, it would be even more justifiable than that one. So I'd love to see it happen. Yeah.
Let us know in the comments below. Give me your number. We mentioned 11 possible guys plus 12 if you want Kershaw in that mix. How many make it? I'm going 9. Bruce is saying we'll go optimistic. I think you said 5 to 6, so we'll just call it 6 for Bruce making it. So let us know what you guys think in the comments below. All right, we got a couple super chats here. One super chat that was for you that I wanted to get to when your microphone was fixed. So thank you for fixing that. Robert, couple shows in a row with the super chat. We appreciate you, Robert. Says, Bruce, can we expect a promotion for Hope, DePaula, or Sirota soon, given they are dominating high A? We said yes to Sirota a little bit earlier on a different super chat. Hope and DePaula, those guys are a lot younger. Didn't do the 3 years in college route, but do you think they could find their way out of high A as well?
I think that they could by the end of the year. I think Sirota is the guy who's closest right now, given the college experience and the age being up there a little bit higher. But I don't think that Hope and DePaula are particularly far off. Hope just spent all of last year in the Arizona Fall League, which is roughly placed as a competition level between high A and double A, and he did fine there. DePaula got promoted to high A midseason last year, so he's been there almost a full calendar year, maybe even a little bit past it now. I can't believe it's almost the end of June, but DePaula is, once again, young. Hope and DePaula both 20 years old now. But, I mean, they continue to rake in high A. Like, it seems like they're ready for another challenge. So I would say I think Sirota is the first guy. Both Hope and DePaula, I think, are in a similar place of could be ready, but also could benefit from a little bit more seasoning with Great Lakes. The good thing is the Dodgers, there's nothing really in double A, no disrespect to any of those guys that are there, but Tulsa is not the greatest roster in the world right now. So they don't really have to worry about like promoting one of those guys and forcing somebody else off. These guys can be promoted on their own timelines. So whenever the Dodgers feel like that they're ready, all three of them could be headed on the same bus for, why not?
You're reading my mind, because my follow-up was going to be, the hard part is if you've got outfielders at the level right above you and you need to figure out playing time. This was a problem about being a Dodgers catcher in the minors for the longest time, but you answered that question. There is not a logjam. It doesn't sound like in the outfield in double A, huh?
There's a guy like Damon Keith is someone that I think could be ready to go up to AAA. So there's certainly ways to create that room, and Hope, DePaula, Sirota are the kind of prospects that you don't let guys that aren't top 100 caliber get in the way of the progression. These are the guys that you make sure whatever's best for them you're doing. So I think that they all qualify for that group and could be on their way to Tulsa. Really, it wouldn't surprise me if I woke up tomorrow and saw all three of them are up. I think it could be any time.
I love it. Carlos with another super chat. It said, thoughts on the upcoming Kansas City series. Which Dodger gets hot, and do Mookie and Freddie break out of their slump? Again, Dustin May, Shohei Ohtani, the two pitchers we know so far. Sunday, who knows? Pick one of the long reliever both guys, and I imagine that will be that day. It could be a Robleski. Kasperi is probably piggybacking Ohtani, and then it could be Robleski on Sunday, I imagine. But let's answer the first two. The second two. Give me a Dodger who you think gets hot in this series.
That's a good question. I would want to look at the Royals pitching matchups to know this for sure. But I think that
just go with your heart and say Michael Conforto.
Yeah,
that's
going with my heart. I think Max Muncy is going to continue to rake. I think he looks great. The thing that's been so impressive for me with Muncy is the low strikeout rate. I think that's shown that he is like a different level of dialed in that we honestly may never have seen before. This Max Muncy since the end of April is on just a completely different level because he's slugging, he's walking almost 20% of the time. And then all of a sudden the strikeouts are so low, which felt like that it was a given. The strikeouts had to be high for it to be a Max Muncy season. And all of a sudden he's just like flipped that script and he's walking more than he's striking out. So I've been so encouraged with what Max Muncy has done lately. I don't see him slowing down.
All of you that are on Twitter at @DStarkend, just send him a tweet and say, hey, Daniel, can you explain why you dropped Max Muncy in your fantasy baseball team and then allowed Jeff to pick him up in your league? Just go ahead. Just fire that. Daniel loves it. He loves being reminded that he dropped Max Muncy. He loved Muncy hitting a grand slam. Our team's playing each other this week as well. So just find at @DStarkend, STARKAND. Send him a tweet and say, hey, did you really drop Max Muncy in fantasy? Go ahead and ask that question. The answer to who gets hot is, gets hot, stays hot. Michael Conforto, baby. Back-to-back games with home runs. We're due, baby. It's good pitching in Kansas City for what it's worth. But, our guy Conforto, everybody's guy, everybody's favorite left fielder for the Dodgers, Michael Conforto. Give me, what do we got? 3-game set. Give me 5 hits for Conforto and 2 of them extra bases. How about that? 5 hits, 2 extra base hits for Conforto. We'll throw a walk in there too. He's going to reach base 6 times in 3 games. So there you go. Mookie and Freddie breaking out of their slump. If you had to pick one who has a better series in Kansas City, is it Mookie who's kind of started to show some life, or Freddie who just seems due? Who would you guess?
I'll go to Freddie because I think Mookie, it's a very slow burn right now because I don't think that his lack of production this year has been directly linked to a slump. I think that it's been progressively trying to put that weight back on from the virus, and that's not something that happens overnight. It's been a slow progression of changing the swing to accommodate for what his new body looks like, changing the approach. He started to dial up the aggression more, which I think is good to at least hunt hittable pitches and be aggressive with them, because when he's not doing the same kind of damage, he's not going to be able to go with a pitch that's just off the plate or right on the corner and be able to hit it out like he could have if his body was right. Mookie, it's just a tough thing to attack and know that he isn't in the body that he expected to be right now. And he's not the kind of guy that really has, or even before had, a lot of weight and strength to spare. So that's just a slow process that hopefully he'll get back to Mookie Betts by October. That's my only hope. Freddie, I think, looks like that he's been in that slump for so long now. So long meaning a couple weeks, which is just Freddie Freeman only to refer to it that way. But I think he's inevitably going to get out of it, and it could be any time. He had the hit today that was big, and I think he looks like he's getting back to normal.
I love it. I love it. All right, let's get to some odds and ends, and then we're going to do a prospect corner here. We've mentioned it a couple of times, but for those who missed it, Ohtani's next start will be Saturday in Kansas City as he continues what David Vassay referred to as his, quote, gradual buildup. Both Bruce and I are predicting that we will get 2 innings out of Shohei Ohtani, or at least pitching into the second inning, depending on pitch count this time around. 2 other guys I wanted to mention real quick, minor league guys worth mentioning. Emmett Sheehan, probably a B-plus start, I would say, the other day, Bruce. 6 innings, no hits, no walks, 13 out of 18 guys struck out. I mean, he only struck out 13 of the 18, so I know it was 6 perfect with 13 Ks, but like 18 Ks would have been nice, Bruce. 18 Ks.
You're sounding like a high school grader who's saying this won't fly in college, and then it absolutely flies in college. Now, Emmett Sheehan was fantastic the other day. Like you said, struck out 13 of the 18 batters he faced, retired all 18. It was like a hot knife through butter with that Sacramento River Cats lineup that just could not do anything. Sheehan threw 50 fastballs out of his, I think, 72 pitches. Like, he just stepped up on the mound, threw the heater that averaged 97, and knew they weren't touching it. And that's the thing that's most impressive. Like, he has the fastball that's great. The changeup looked excellent. The slider was good too. Really, Sheehan's in a place now where that fastball out of the low slot with so much ride at the top of the zone is such a good pitch. He's going to throw that. And then as soon as you're not going to be able to hit it if you're not sitting on it, as soon as you start to sit on it, then he'll throw in that circle change that dives away from lefties or mix in a slider against the righties. And he's in a really, really great place. So I'm excited about him. And then for James Outman, he's still striking out almost a third of the time. The production has been there. It's the Pacific Coast League, so you have to throw that in. I don't think that James Outman having an OPS above 850 in AAA is an indicator that he's ready to come up to the big leagues and all of a sudden hit, because the strikeout rate's still high, and I just think this is the player that he is. As unfortunate as that is to say, I think he's a defensive replacement kind of player right now. And until he comes up to the big leagues and strings together some success to prove me wrong, that's kind of where I'm at with him.
Yeah, the Outman, not a popular name. And I do this partly because I get a kick out of the vitriol towards James Outman cracks me up. But however, has hit a home run in 3 straight games. He's 7 for 14 with a double and 3 walks in that stretch, 10 RBIs for the month of June, OPS over 1,000 with 13 extra base hits in 19 games. I guess my question as a prospect guy, I think everybody has resigned themselves to like his future is not with the Dodgers organization. Am I crazy for thinking that there's like probably 8 teams out there in the league where James Outman would like borderline, they would be happy to have him as their starting center fielder at the major league level right now?
Partially because he's such a good defender, and you look around baseball and there's a lot of center fielders who can't hit worth a lick. And that's not the case for the Dodgers, but there's a lot of teams out there who have that. I mean, Outman isn't a platinum glover like Brenton Doyle is, but Doyle hasn't produced offensively, and he's still out there, and the Rockies are perfectly happy with him being the everyday center fielder. So there's always going to be a place on a roster for a guy who can play defense like Outman can. The reason that I'm not really confident in the bat translating to the big leagues, even as he's producing in AAA, the contact quality is always there with him. That's something that is not usually the problem when he comes up to the big leagues. It's not like he's not hitting the ball hard. It's just he's not hitting the ball. And so with the strikeout rate, the whiff rate still as high as it is in AAA, that is where I'm just not confident that if he's striking out a third of the time in AAA, once he gets to the big leagues, if that happens again this year, when it happens again, if that strikeout rate is still up, 38-40%, then there's just not enough plate appearances left over for the contact quality to create a good hitter.
Yeah. Totally. And I think that's fair. And, I had hoped that the strikeout rate, the whiff rate would eventually come down, and it just hasn't. So we saw him succeed in the majors at one point. He's been awful ever since the beginning of that rookie season. So I just think he's a fascinating guy. Like, you could tell me multiple different stories of how his career ends up playing out. You could tell me that, he has sort of it's a weird comp, but like a Miguel Rojas type career where he's just a defensive replacement at a premium position that hangs around on a team because he can get it, run into one every once in a while and just be a great defender at an important position. Or you could tell me he becomes a really productive MLB player because he figures out how to get that strikeout rate done, and anything in between. But I think it's pretty clear that the Dodgers probably aren't going to be the organization to give him the runway to actually figure that out at the major league level. And so, if not this year, next year, it feels like he's going to be part of a trade package. So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. But before we get to some questions, let's do our favorite segment with Bruce every Thursday, which is Prospect Corner. And I promised you it was a name that you had heard of before, and it is none other than Alex Freeland. Alex Freeland, 23-year-old infielder, primarily a shortstop, has made 10 starts at third base of late. Third-round pick in 2022, consensus top 5 organizational prospect coming into the year. He ranked in the top 50 on Fangraphs, ESPN, and Baseball America's prospect list, and then in the top 100 on the Athletic, Baseball Prospectus, and MLB.com. So he, like Outman, has been hot in the month of June. I don't want to steal all your thunder because you have way better stuff than this to share, but 419 on-base percentage, 478 slugging percentage in the month of June. Talk to us about your thoughts and feelings about Alex Freeland.
Yeah, he's right on the brink, right? So this is a guy that most Dodger fans have heard of by now because he's in AAA. He's got the infield defense. There's been a lot of people calling for Alex Freeland to be up in the big leagues since last year now, because last year really was his breakout. 2022, he was drafted in the 3rd round out of UCF, and he's a guy that has had a really interesting path to where he is now. Had a club foot as a kid and just really has never let anything get in his way. Slugged the ball at UCF, wound up getting taken in the 3rd round, like I said, and his introduction to pro ball wasn't a great one. Went straight to high A and was very middle of the road for his first portion of time in the Dodgers system. Really, that allowed him to fall under the radar, where he wasn't a guy that was really standing out when you looked at the Dodger system. And then last year is when he finally turned the corner, figured it out, absolutely slugged his way through the first month in high A, got to double A, continued to hit, and then got to triple A by the end of the year. The thing that really makes his profile as intriguing as it is the glove at shortstop. He's an above average. Some people think it could be even a plus glove at shortstop, which will always be valuable regardless of what the bat does. The thing that is worth cautioning about Alex Freeland, when you look at top prospect lists and you see a guy who's bordering on top 50 or even in the top 50 with some outlets, it kind of plants in your mind an expectation that this is a guy who could be like an all-star every year, a franchise cornerstone that you build around and put into the middle of your order. That really isn't Alex Freeland. He is up as high as he is on prospect lists because of the high floor and consistency that he is expected to bring. This is a guy that I think really any time could be penciled into an everyday big league shortstop. He's a switch hitter who is much better against righties from the left side, but can hold his own as a right-handed batter as well. Still has some thump there. And there really isn't a lot of risk anymore with him. Big on base ability. He's going to walk a lot. So this is a guy that when I envision Alex Freeland's career, I envision an above average, everyday caliber shortstop who gets on base quite a bit and maybe a 105, 110 weighted runs created plus every year. That's not an all-star per se, but it's going to be a guy who just farms WAR because he's a great shortstop and a good enough bat, and he's a valuable player in any organization. So, as I said, when you think about this year, he's better from the left side against right-handed pitchers. So I think that makes it a little complicated to imagine his fit on the roster this year, because you can't really think about him as an immediate perfect Miguel Rojas replacement because he doesn't do as well against left-handed pitchers. But I think there could be a future for him if any kind of injury happens. He could play second base, shortstop, third base, and hold his own against righties, get on base enough in the big leagues really anytime. So I think he's already in the group of depth infielders if the major league squad needs one.
This might be a slight trigger warning to some people, but do you think that when you describe the player you just mapped out, it sounds like to me a Gavin Lux type player, but the ability to be the defensive shortstop that people hoped he would be? Is that a fair comp? Like the offensive player that Gavin Lux has turned out to be at the major league level, which is in that like 105 to 110 range, but able to play an above average shortstop.
Yeah, I think that that's a decent comp for sure. I think that there's a lot of people that are going to be worried when they hear that, like you said, but that's a valuable player if you can play a good shortstop and produce offensively in that sort of way. He's a different offensive profile in that there's going to be a lot more walks, and on base, the average isn't going to be as high, but there still could be some thump. Alex Freeland, when he connects, has some pretty good underlying batted ball data, but there also has been some swing and miss concern at times as he comes up through the minor league. So that's kind of why I don't really see his offensive profile really taking off in the big leagues at any point. But I think that it's not enough swing and miss where I think that it's like a James Outman situation or something like that. He'll be good enough in the big leagues, and the walk rate is good enough that if he, throws up an on base in the 360 range and then plays a great shortstop and runs into, 15 homers a year, that's a really good big leaguer right there.
Yeah, somebody in the chat asked if it was a Michael Busch comp, which is where I came up with Lux, because he doesn't feel like he has the offensive profile of Busch, who was always like, oh, this guy could really be a really above average, great offensive player. We don't know where he's going to play defensively. And Busch has been awesome this year. It hasn't felt like to me, and you're the expert, so I'm asking you, Freeland doesn't feel like he has the upside that people believed Michael Busch would have.
Yeah, in some ways it's a complete inverse of Michael Busch, and that the one thing that I will agree is similar is the high floor. That part, definitely, I think that you could tell for a while that Michael Busch was going to be a good big leaguer, or at least a solid big leaguer. I think it's the same way with Freeland, but they're going to contribute values in different ways. Yeah. And the other thing with Freeland, I'll throw in, when I say this is an everyday shortstop, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be the Dodgers' everyday shortstop. We talk about these things, we talk about them in a vacuum. And I don't know if Alex Freeland is going to dethrone Mookie Betts with the way that he's played shortstop this year. So the immediate future for Freeland that I think makes the most sense is as a utility infielder, potentially at second base, getting some time at third base as well. And if they decide to play Tommy Edman in the outfield a little bit more than he has been, then maybe he gets some everyday sort of reps, especially against righties in the infield. But it's just a valuable kind of profile that will contribute in a lot of ways. And that's something that, well, it doesn't jump off the page of like, this guy's got, future top 10 player in baseball sort of upside. You need those kind of guys to glue your organization together. And Alex Freeland is that perfect kind of archetype.
I love it. I love it. There's Prospect Corner with Bruce. And again, you can check out a lot of his prospect stuff. Just find him on social media, and he does a great job of keeping us updated on that. Let's get to a few questions. I know we're almost coming up on the hour 10 mark. Thanks to the 2,000 plus people in here on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. And again, those listening via Apple, Spotify, or Google Podcasts to the Dodger Heads podcast. We appreciate you all. Some questions here. Dodgers Hub. Since Mookie, Freddie Smith, Muncy, Pages, and Edman were finalists, does that mean they're all-stars? It does not. Only Shohei Ohtani has been confirmed as an all-star, but Will Smith, Freddie Freeman, Tommy Edman, Mookie Betts, Max Muncy, Pages, and Teoscar Hernandez are all finalists and are in the final voting. There are 2 at every position, 6 in the outfield. So again, that voting will go, I believe, through next Wednesday. I think it opens Monday and closes Wednesday. And then Saturday or Sunday of next weekend is when they'll announce the reserve. So there you go. We appreciate the question there. Here you go. GI's got a good one for you. Are there any lower level or lesser known prospects, Bruce, that you would hate to give up in a trade package? Look, Bruce is a prospect guy. He'd hate to give any of them up in a trade package for what it's worth. But also, are there any prospects you think are perhaps overrated or blocked and that should be traded?
This is a tough one to just jump right in. I'll start with the lower level. He's not lesser known anymore, but it might sound counterintuitive to the fact that I'm a huge prospect guy, but I'm not a huge prospect hugger. I really am not somebody that...
It's not allowed. You're not allowed in the prospect community anymore then, Bruce.
I don't shy away from the idea of if you can go get a guy who's proven he can do it at the big league level, then go do it. So it might not fit the lesser known thing, but I wouldn't want to see them part with Eduardo Quintero because he's got the 5-tool kind of profile. I think when you look at the Dodger system, there's a lot of guys who might have upside as hitters, and that's valuable in its own right, but Sirota and Eduardo Quintero, these guys that also have really good gloves, those are the kind of guys that I struggle to part with because ultimately we've seen it a lot with some of the prospects who have a good bat, but maybe not a defensive home. It's tough to break through to the Dodger roster that way. We saw it with Michael Busch. We've seen it with others where they wind up having to get moved, even though they're valuable players and prospects. They just don't fit onto the Dodgers roster specifically. But then you look at guys like Quintero and Sirota who have the defensive upside. And those are guys that I can much more easily imagine breaking through to the big leagues and sticking with the Dodgers specifically. So those are the guys that I'm certainly more protective over.
Are there, the second question is interesting when I think about guys who maybe it's harder to find a pathway for them to playing time or a pathway to the major league level. We talked about Outman. Again, I don't think most people would consider him in this question, but guys like that, where it's like, look, do I think there's 8 teams out there? Hunter Fiducia is another one. Like, do I think there's 8 to 10 teams out there where those guys would be starting at the major league level? Absolutely. Unfortunately for them, they're in the wrong organization, and the Dodgers, their incentive is to keep them at AAA in case they have depth. So those are guys at the higher levels. Are there anybody else? Is there anybody else that comes to mind when you think about that? Like, hey, this might be a nice player, but in the next 3 to 5 years, I don't see any way, shape, or form that this person is actually going to be able to contribute.
Yeah, the main guy that comes to mind as a blocked and should be either traded or just let go maybe is Ryan Ward, just because I don't really see a way that he breaks through to the Dodger big league roster. And I hope for his sake that he's going to get a big league chance at some point, because I think that he's slugged enough in AAA to earn a look. I don't think that Ryan Ward, like, that's not to say that I'm endorsing him as a future surefire everyday big leaguer or anything like that, but I look at him in a similar way to I looked at Ryan Noda a couple years ago. Was a first base corner outfielder in Oklahoma City and had a really good year, but there wasn't really a spot for him. And he's bounced around the A's, Angels, now with the White Sox now. So I think Ryan Ward could follow a similar path to that. And I just hope all those guys, you know, I hope for every guy who does well in AAA to get a chance somewhere in the big leagues. It's tough to nail down this question though, because especially on the pitching side, there's no such thing as blocked and no path. I get that question asked a lot about relievers or starters or guys in the lower minor leagues. If you're a pitcher, there's absolutely no such thing as blocked to the big leagues, especially with the Dodgers, because they always need more good pitchers. And if you can develop into a good pitcher, then they're not just going to willingly get rid of you. I also think that, like, generally with prospects, the Dodgers, and I don't think that it makes much sense to go to the table and say, here's a prospect we want to trade away. Because usually that means if you're trying to trade a guy away, then other teams, that's not the guy they're asking for. The guys that other teams want to get back for their major leaguers are the guys that you are trying to clutch onto and say, no, we do not want to move that guy. So that's just usually not the way that it goes. Yeah,
the one other thought that popped into my head on the pitching side was, we know the Dodgers have a type and they want high ceiling starters. Like the Landon Knack types tend to have less value to them than maybe to other teams that would love to have a guy who just goes out there with like a 4.2 ERA for 30 starts a year. So that was going to be the only other thing. I went to look at Dodgers prospect rankings. Sure enough, they don't have a ton of guys that aren't like massively high upside guys. This is minorly informed, so correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe a guy like Jared Karros feels like a type who's not like a elite stuff type guy, but that was the only other category I was thinking of, is the Landon Knack category where, has some value to the Dodgers, but they're going to take their chances on, you know, the River Ryans, the Eric Swans of the world every single time over, he'll be a solid number 4 starter, ...
They're going to take their chances on those guys, but I do think that they have to find a lot of value in the guys that have a little bit higher floor. I don't know, Karros might have played himself out of that group just with the play this year, but he has that sort of archetype. But as the Dodgers continue to deal with injuries, I think that it might actually shift a little bit that direction to say that any pitcher, if it's a high floor, if it's a high ceiling, you need something high, and then you're going to be valuable to the Dodgers because they always need more pitchers. So I don't think that they really even have the luxury to discriminate between those two groups. Fair enough.
On my side, you had a question very similar, so I think we kind of answered it. Aaron asked earlier when Kershaw is slated to pitch next. He pitches Wednesday, and I bring this up for this reason. We're going to be doing a live show that night, assuming Kershaw gets across the 3,000 strikeout mark. So next week, obviously, we will be here on Sunday night. We will be here on Tuesday night, on Wednesday night, and on Thursday night of next week. So get ready for some Chicago White Sox coverage coming straight at you next week. But I believe it will be Daniel Starkin and I at least on Wednesdays, barring any crazy Lakers news that day. And so next Wednesday, make sure you got plans to join us here, assuming our guy Clayton Kershaw gets 3 more strikeouts and crosses that threshold. All right, let's get one more question. We'll do a fun food question, and then we'll be out of here. Cole wants to know, 4th of July coming up. Bruce, what's going on the grill? Is there a must-have food item for you on 4th of July?
I'm going to be at Dodger Stadium on the 4th of July, so I won't be having a typical barbecue or anything like that. But I think I'm pretty typical in that if I was going to, then it would be hot dogs, it would be burgers, it would be all the regular stuff that you imagine sitting by a pool and then getting ready for the fireworks later. I think I follow the pretty stereotypical idea of what you'd be eating on the 4th of July.
Okay, so if they're doing burgers and they're doing hot dogs, what's your go-to?
That's the ultimate question, and I'm going to burgers. I think that a good homemade burger on a grill is as good as it gets.
Yeah. My answer is even better. I'm just going to get one of both. I'm not going to choose between the two. I'm going to say I'll take down a cheeseburger. Thank you very much. And I will take down a hot dog as well and move it along. Are you anything on the hot dog guy? This is where we get into controversy here, but what do you throw on the hot dog? Like, imagine you've sort of got we're not going like super fancy here, but if you had your pick of toppings on a hot dog, what are you throwing on there?
Yeah, onions are the first thing for me that I would prefer onions if it's there. Like an onions and ketchup makes a solid hot dog for me. And then if there's no onions, then I'll pivot to relish and that'll make it good for me too.
Okay, so ketchup and onions is the ideal. Okay,
that's the Dodger dog shifted way. That's always how I used to get my Dodger dogs. I don't get Dodgers dogs super often anymore at the stadium, but when I did that, it was always onions and ketchup, and that's the way that I got used to eating hot dogs.
Okay, if grilled onions are an option, are we going raw or grilled?
Grilled. I'm a huge grilled onion guy. It doesn't matter if it's burger, hot dog. If there's grilled onions involved, steak, I love grilled onions.
Yeah, it's interesting because I love grilled onions. I think I might prefer raw onions on the hot dog just for the little texture mix up there. I'm just a classic Costco. Give me ketchup, give me mustard, give me onions. If you've got sauerkraut, I'd throw some sauerkraut on there as well. Relish is kind of the one thing I used to like as a kid, stay away from. But that's what I would go for. Aaron wants to know, he puts mayonnaise on his hot dog and wants to know, am I weird?
I'm sorry, Aaron. Yeah. I would consider that weird. I'm not going to get on board with the mayo.
Yeah. I can't get there. So apologies. We appreciate you, Aaron. But just straight mayonnaise. Like,
I would hope there's something else, right? Like if you're going to try and make it Thousand Island or something, mayonnaise and ketchup, that still feels like a sin. But
yeah, ketchup and mayonnaise mixed together is like an elite sauce. And not on my hot dog, I don't think.
No.
So I don't know. Sorry, Aaron. Yeah, he said I figured, so he at least knows it. There you go. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for us for tonight's show. Again, the Dodgers won, in case you missed that, 10 of their last 12. Season high, 6-game lead in the division over the Padres, 6.5 over the San Francisco Giants. If you missed the announcement, we'll be live as normal Sunday, as normal Tuesday, but a special bonus edition on Wednesday, assuming Clayton Kershaw gets the 3,000 strikeouts. And then we will be back with Bruce next Thursday as well. Forewarning, in case I forget to mention, the month of July, at least for me in my life, is the craziest month of the year for what I do. And so just a heads up that either I might not be around a whole lot at times over the next month and a half or so, or we might have some weeks where we shift some dates around in order to accommodate. So apologies in advance. If you blame anybody, blame me. Do not blame Bruce. Do not blame Anthony or Matt or Blake. It's on me. Okay. If the schedule gets weird or the people that you're used to seeing aren't there, blame me. But we will have you covered for the month of July. And then in August, my life returns back to normal and we go from there. So thank you everybody in advance for your understanding. That is Bruce. I am Jeff. Enjoy the rest of your day, Dodgers fans. As always, go Dodgers. And yes, especially now, still champs.